Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. On that note, folks, I would like to welcome you to the program. Today's paper, 1 full hour magazine show on Voice of Liberia. It comes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at about this time. Today is Wednesday, April 5, 2023. It is great to be here on the beautiful Wednesday, the day that our Lord, our God has made, that we will all rejoice and be glad in it. Oh yes. On this edition of the show, we are your regular presenters, Abraham Parker and
Samiria Online.
Okay, so we have about 6 local days this morning that we will be featuring, with too many different stories making news in the print media. Like we said, it's on the Wednesday, folks. Those of you watching as well would like to say good morning and welcome. 6 different local daily issues making news in the print media. And we have the New Dawn newspaper,
The Independent newspaper.
Flipping over to the Heritage newspaper,
The Daily Observer newspaper.
and of course, we have New Liberia newspaper as well being featured on this edition of the show. But it's great to be here on the beautiful Wednesday. So our first stop will be the New Dawn newspaper through the Independent. Oh yes, through the Independent, the New Dawn newspaper, volume 13, number 50, Wednesday, April 5, 2023. Indeed, this paper has been sold for $40 Liberian, and the ballon headlines are printed in black. It says NEC wants CPP petition dismissed. You see the photos of Justice, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, Councillor Sialen Gio, and then the photo of National Elections Commission boss David Etta Brown Lassana. Just to take a glance, those of you following, and the second headline on the New Dawn newspaper that also features the French version as well, says our reverse salary harmonization, Kumi's vows. The photo of the current CPP here, that's a political leader of the collaborating political parties, Arizona Cummings, vows to revise salary harmonization. But let's give you a gist of this story before we get to the back page of the New Dawn newspaper, where the CPP political leader, of course, is talking about revising the harmonization exercise. Is it the standard bearer of the collaborating political parties? And as Anakumi says, government harmonization policy, which caused a drastic reduction in salaries of public sector employees, has dimmed the suffering and rendered more Liberians poor. Cummings said bad and corruption-prone policy by the administration of President George Weah amounts to weakness, he vowed to reclaim the wrongful harmonization and restore to salaries at even better levels by a CPP government. He said more Liberians are suffering and living far below the poverty line than any other town in the history of Liberia. Cummings said President Weah's 5 years rule has economically worse off than ever. He made the observation following a tour of the Kakata and Valtan general markets in Kakata, Margibi County on April, indeed, to guarantee protection of their goods and businesses. Okay, when he said that, he said, Kakata market officials said, rising crime rates is not only a serious security threat to their personal safety, but also a hindrance to their businesses, especially at night time. They also pledged for loans to sustain and grow their businesses. Responding, Mr. Cummings assured the marketers that within the first 100 days of a CPP government, he will ensure that Liberian businesses, including marketers, have access to credit facilities to grow and expand their businesses. How possible can that be? Cummings vows to reverse salary harmonization is something that we'll wait to see after the 2023 elections. But let's turn over to the back page of the newspaper. And the back page, which also features sports as well, says 27 political parties commit to violence-free election. Okay, so as per the back page of the New Dawn newspaper, you can view on your stream. It says 27 political parties commit to violence-free elections. How possible can this be? This was seen in 2017. Is this possible at this time of the country's peace process? Well, let's cross over to our colleague to give you the revision of issues making news in the Independent newspaper.
And so let's take a look at the Independent newspaper. And it says, volume 23, number 96 of Wednesday, April 5th, 2023 edition. And this paper is sold for 40 Liberian dollars. So the first headlines on the Independent newspaper says, Weah approves war crimes court with a question mark as Liberia endorses democracy global fight against impunity part. And so for those of you watching, let's take a look at the Independent newspaper. And that's the front page of the Independent newspaper. We have Prince Weah Johnson, a photo of him here. And also George Bole of LBRC. And we also have Sekou Kone and Thomas Limlin. So let's take a glance at it again. Okay, so let's take a look at the Weah approves war crimes court as Liberia endorses democracy global fight against impunity part. And it reads, Liberia incumbent President George Manuel Weah and his officials since their ascendancy to power in January 2018 have been dragging the implementation of key recommendations by the country's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, including the setting up of War and Economic Crime Court. for prosecution of those thought to bear the greatest responsibility for the committed during the armed conflict, during an estimated 250,000 persons, predominantly women and children, were killed and more than 1 million than externally and internally displaced. In late March this year, Liberia joined 78 nations formed around the world in Lusaka, Gambia, that endorsed a human rights and diplomacy treaty referred to as the Lusaka Democracy Summit. The leaders who participated in the summit, which was held in March 2023, representing their respective governments and people, including Liberia, jointly endorsed its outcome. They stated, "We, the leaders of the Summit for Democracy, reaffirmed and shared belief that democracy governments reflecting an effective participation and will of people is humanity most doing means to advance peace, prosperity, equality, sustainable development, and security. Democracy is necessary to ensure that every voice is heard, that the human rights of all respected, protected, and fulfilled online and offline, and that the rule of law is upheld." And so let's take a look at the back page of the Independent newspaper, which the first headline here says, "JNB craves BVR process extension. Says not doing so will be an act of deliberate disinfringement." And the next headline here says, "Liberian new coins durable and easy to carry." Looking at the last headline on the Independent newspaper, it says LDC set to invest $31 million in Southeastern electricity. Now let's turn over to Ibrahim Parker as he continues with the Heritage newspaper.
Well, of course, certainly the next stop on today's paper is the Heritage newspaper, volume 25, number 355275, Monrovia, Liberia. April 5, 2023. This paper is sold for $40 Liberian. The truth is our guide. The Heritage newspaper with the ballon headline printed in black. "I will run for the Liberian Senate," says Costa, leaves room for running mate issue. Oh yes, Costa clarifies. "I will run for the Liberian Senate," says Costa, leaves room for running mate issue. The next headline is at Farmington 2023 Peace Declaration, the President Weah cautions political leaders to treat women in elections with respect and civility. Oh yes. But let's take this story from President George Weah before we get to the back page of the Heritage newspaper. It says, barely 5 months to the ensuing presidential and legislative elections in the country, President George Weah has stressed the need for political leaders across the country to uphold the pledge to prevent violence against women in elections and treat them with respect and civility. In his opening remarks at the 2023 Farmington Declaration of Peace, President of peace signed with political leaders, President Weah noted that beyond political violence or physical violence, women in elections or politics in Liberia have often faced harassment discrimination, and psychological abuse, both in person and online. This behavior must not be dismissed as simply the course of doing politics. It is a clear violation of human rights. It is a demeaning, offensive, disempowering, and cowardly. Such violence. This particular story continues on page 9. Okay, so page 9, we move. Page 9, where are you? From the Heritage newspaper. But let's call it a veil right here. But as we'll take a look at the back page of the Heritage newspaper as we continue with that development coming up very shortly. On the back page of the Heritage newspaper, Foreign Minister Kimaya holds a discussion with U.S. Secretary of Education. Oh yes, you see the photos of the two ministers being placed here. An African Development Bank earmarks Liberia program for youth. That's African Development earmarks Liberia for new development program for youth and entrepreneurs. Oh yes. The Supreme Court reserves ruled the NCPP petition. And on the sideline, features sports. You see the photo of Messi talking about the future of this great soccer player. Is on setting Barcelona, PSG, and a third way. No interest in that development. We'll cross over to my colleague for the next stop in the local day.
And so next on our list here we have the Daily Observer newspaper. And the first headline here is printed in red. It says Farmington Peace Part signed. But can it stop electoral violence? That's a question that I think people ask on a daily basis. And this paper is sold for 40 Liberian dollars. And it's April 5th, Wednesday, 2023 edition. The first headline says Farmington Peace Part signed. But can it stop electoral violence? And here we have the photo of President George Weah on the top left, and also photo of former Vice President Joseph Boakai, who is on the top right, and a photo of Elizana Cummins and Helen Brown. For those of you watching, you can take a look at the Daily Observer front page. So coming down to our next headline on the front page of the Daily Observer, it says new contract for rogue company's owner. And the next headline here says Supreme Court hearts President Weah executive order number 117. And now the last headline here says new innovation boosts farmers' yields and incomes. And so that does it for the front page of Daily Observer newspaper. Let's take a look at the back page. And it says Supreme Court reserves ruling on lawsuit against National Elections Commission. The last headline here says Minister Tue cries to African Development Bank for $10 million to save rubber sector. And so let's take a look at Minister Tue cries to African Development Bank for $10 million to save rubber sector. The Minister of Finance, Samuel Tue, has apparently shocked the visiting Vice President of the African Development Bank, Solomon Quinner, in his delegation with the revelation that Liberia's outgrower rubber sector could be on the verge of collapse unless $10 million is raised to save the sector. Tue, during a meeting with the AFDB delegation at the ministry, noted that Liberian rubber farmers needed just $10 million for value addition since Firestone, the latest rubber company in the country, was no longer buying rubber from outgrowers. According to the minister, Firestone had been planting trees over the years and can now produce enough not to buy rubber from elsewhere. This, according to him, means that rubber outgrowers are now under the pressure to sustain the sector and have therefore identified value addition such as processing as the surest way to create jobs, sustain employment, and boost revenue. Access to finance in a broader private sector challenge in the rubber sector, which employs a lot of people, is no exception, the minister said. The minister's statement came as a shock to Quinner as he wondered why the government would allow such a critical sector of the economy to face threat of collapse. Meanwhile, the minister also commended the AFDB and welcomed the proposal to establish the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank in Liberia to build the entrepreneurial skills of young Liberians and increase access to finance. He noted that the project will also ease pressure on the public sector amid the negative economic impact of COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war, as well as growing numbers of young people entering the job market. Speaking earlier, Quinner said his institution is committed to creating credit guarantee for young entrepreneurs, and the establishment of the YIP was one of the best ways to achieve that. The meeting with finance minister authorities was part of Quinner and his delegation's 3 days visit to Liberia from April 3rd to 5th, holding high-level strategic discussion with Liberian authorities and other development partners, including the private sector. To Abraham Parker for the latest update on Front Page Africa.
So certainly, to conclude from my end, like we said, we featuring 6 local data issues making news in the printing media. From my end, we have the Front Page Africa newspaper, sold for just $40 Liberian. Volume 17, number 63. It's Wednesday, 5 April 2023. Okay. In the ballon headline printed in red, Liberia-VOL in century language and growing culture of militancy. President George Weah urges political parties in Liberia. Voter registration constitutionality on a probe at Supreme Court as a full bench reserves ruling. BVR fit hangs. And you see this development from the front page Africa newspaper right before you, those of you viewing. BVR fit hangs. And you see the photos of Liberians in queue, a very long queue, and at the headquarters of the National Elections Commission on the side, right, you see the Justice Temple of Justice. But let's give you a gist of this development before we cross over to our colleague right here on the Wednesday. Yeah, let's look at this development that has to do with the National Elections Commission and the CPP. Okay, it says here the legitimacy over ongoing voters registration by the National Elections Commission is currently on a probe at the Supreme Court following a collaborating political parties petition raising constitutional questions. The CPP have questioned the constitutionality of the NCC to conduct, that's the NEC, to conduct voter registration before hindering of the census in the country. During a hearing into its petition Tuesday, April 4th, before the full bench, the CPP, through its legal representation, Councillor Aloysius Toole and Fine Kanga, contended that the action of the NDC to conduct voters registration after the conduct of a census, but without constitutionally demarcating constituencies into which a voter is to be registered, raises constitutional questions. They cited Article 89B of the 1986 Constitution as amended and said it is required in Article 39 that the legislature shall cause a census of the Republic to be undertaken every 10 years. Further referencing Article 80E of the 1986 Constitution as amended, immediately following a national census and before the next elections, the Elections Commission shall reapportion the constituencies by the new population figures so that every constituent should have as close to the same population as possible, provided, however, that a constituent must be solely within a county and that each constituent shall have approximately equal population of 20,000 or such number of citizens as the legislature shall prescribe in keeping with population growth and movements as reviewed by a national census provided by the total number of electoral constituencies in the Republic shall not exceed 100. However, the CPP said, contrary to the mandate of the Constitution of Liberia, the NEC in September 2022 published what it called the key electoral dates of 2023 presidential and legislative elections, in which he announced the plans to conduct voters registration beginning December 15, 2022 and ending on March 17, 2023, without any indication to demarcate and reapportion constituencies as required by Article 80 of the Liberian Constitution of 1986 as amended. And to get the gist, just a gist of that particular development, and the full story is on the front page Africa, sold for $40 Liberian. So we'll take a look at the back page. And the back page of the newspaper is commercials. They're talking about the book launch. Oh yes. So before we go into our discussion point, let's cross over to St. Mary for the last local daily.
Looking at the last local daily here, we have the New Liberia newspaper as our last paper for today. And so the front page of the New Liberia newspaper says, Declaration of Peace. President Weah leads political parties to sign the Farmington Declaration or duty to peaceful elections. And so those of you watching, that's the front page of the New Liberia newspaper. You can take a look at it. The next story here says, AFDB to establish youth entrepreneurship and investment bank in Africa, in Liberia. And so that does it for the front page of the New Liberia newspaper. Let's now take a look at the back page, which says, President Weah provides 5 million rice to Muslims for Ramadan. And on that you see the president's photo, and that's the president of the Republic of Liberia. The next headline here says, VP Taylor warns against voters trucking. That had been one of the discussions around here. And the last headline for the back page of the new newspaper, it reads, Land Authority forwards illegal and land dealers to court. Now let's take a look at a little here about the Land Authority. And it reads, a Chinese national and general manager of Sino Liberia Investment and the Liberia have been forwarded to the Liberia National Police for dubiously purchasing of public land while demanding the government of Liberia to pay for the land. Mr. Ching Shiveng and Lawrence W.G. Kura were referred to the National Police on March 27, 2023 by the Liberia Land Authority after investigation against the perpetrators of the LLA. According to the LLA, the individuals have been suspected and apprehended by it for allegedly being in the possession of a fraudulent public land deed that does not bear the signature of the chairman of the LLA, Attorney J. Adams Manoba. And now let's turn to Abraham Parker as we have our discussion for the day and take in phone calls.
Okay, with the revision of almost all of the issues making news in 6 local dailies in Liberia, it's about time we'll look at some major issues that centers around the growth of our country, Liberia. And if we will look at the paper so far, we see the issue of the Farmington Peace Declaration, it surfaced in almost all of the papers today.
Sure.
And I just like one of the Daily Observer newspaper. It says, Farmington Peace Port signed, but can it stop electoral violence? That's a question that we need to look at this morning on today's paper. It is good that we look at these things for the safety of our country. On yesterday, about 27 political parties, registered political parties, went to that particular Farmington Hotel in Margery County, where the political leaders, be it opposition, the ruling establishment, signed that agreement to uphold peace
In our country.
yes, in the October 10, 2023 elections. What brings to mind? Is it that this Farmington Peace Agreement that is being signed by political leaders in our country, can it stop electoral violence from, occurring around the country, ahead of the process, into the process, and the rest of it? That's a question. So, Mira, let's take you back in 2017. In 2017, another agreement of such was signed,
Yeah.
where 20 of Liberia's 22 registered political parties by then signed that particular agreement, adhering to the mandate that yes, peace will be maintained in Liberia, whether in or after the 2017 elections, going forward till where we are today, having another agreement being signed. But what have you observed over the time? Like sometimes it is just a mere saying when these agreements are being signed, Samira, and then those who are to make sure that that particular agreement or whatsoever thing,
To enforce it.
yeah, to have it enforced is the problem. I guess you've seen some things over the time from 2017, 2018, 2020, the 2020 senatorial elections. You
Sure.
furthered that issue as well, and even prior to the conduct of the voter registration exercise, you've been hearing things from different angles and the rest of it. I guess you've seen. But what do you make of this entire Farmington Peace agreement that has been signed by political parties in Liberia?
And let's just say, because we had 27 political parties at Farmington yesterday, and let's say we look forward to seeing the peace, because this is a peace agreement that was signed. And we look forward to that. We pray that people hold this agreement. People who are supposed to enforce it, they enforce it. Because looking at district number 10, and that is Yaka-Koluba district. Since this process, it has been one of the districts wherein you see a lot of noise coming from. And with this agreement being signed, we hope that peace be all over Liberia till October 10 presidential and representative elections. And that's a question that we should also ask the citizens, to ask them as to if they see peace after this agreement had been signed, as to if peace will reign in this election.
Okay, so the speakers on yesterday, the president of the Republic of Liberia was key. The first statement he talked about respecting women in these elections. But one of the sticky issues that has to do with the 30% women representation, that particular new election law, it is not possible now for women to be represented 30%.
Why?
But
Why you say that?
No, as per, I think if you follow the Association of Female Lawyers, they are quite disappointed that the president had to veto that portion that talks about 30% of women's participation into our electoral process. One of the reasons was the time is not timely. With just 7 months to the election, sometimes you have the National Elections Commission have to do more publicity going to process, making sure that the citizens' minds are enlightened before this process can go on. But I think the president talked about the issue of respecting women into those who have already accepted to take on this particular challenge, by contesting, that they shouldn't be bullied, they shouldn't be seen as people who are not serious, but people who mean business. So he cautioned political parties and actors as well in our country, most especially the male, to look at some of these things. And then the president too stressed the issue about militancy. Militancy has been one thing, Samira, that has taken over. And if the National Elections Commission or this policies can be instituted to get rid of this issue of militancy, I think we'll have some good process.
Sure.
That I've observed over the time. Political parties use their militants to instigate violence. And these things, when it continue to happen, like maybe a political leader from one political party went into one community, and you see one person, two person, three person seeing themselves as militant. They have to go there and chant battle cry.
Yeah.
This one will not go on, this one will not go on. And these things continue to happen. It undermines the very process that we talk about agreement.
Sure.
So the former vice president too was key, as per he talked about the extension of the biometric voter registration exercise.
Yes, he did.
And he's saying in order for peace to be maintained,
Yes.
as per the agreement, the issue of an extension is important in the first 6 counties. And then he made mention of some electoral violence that took place in the 2020 senatorial elections, the by-elections in District 13 and District 15 as well, where 2 female candidates from the angle of the Unity Party were tussled to the highest extent. And if you are to look back to the agreement that was signed in 2017, it forbids all of these things.
Sure.
And why, after the 2017 elections, these violence continue, continue to surface.
They just signed another one yesterday again. Looking at the previous one, looking at some things not being settled in the previous one, and another one was signed yesterday. So that brings in the question as to if it can stop electoral violence. That's the question.
Okay, so the former vice president made mention about Grand Kitmount. And now the issue about trucking too, it is a major factor to electoral violence.
Yes.
Right?
Even the vice president spoke about it in one of the papers.
Yeah.
She said that we should stop trucking.
Yeah. So it causes violence too. So now there are people being brought in the country from Sierra Leone. The former vice president talked about that. And he feels one of the ways to live up to this agreement is when these things are being stopped and put under control, that we look at as a country, you being ruling establishment, whenever you phone in that act, make sure that those who are into it, stop it, or you have a strong core policy.
Sure, Ibrahim, because it's not just about signing the paper. Signing the paper and not enforcing it means nothing.
Oh, yeah.
It means nothing. So
yeah.
Look forward to that.
So for my own take, before we take to the telephone lines, is signing the paper, like you said, Samira, is just one thing.
It's one thing.
And hearing,
of course,
to what you guys have signed is another
it's
thing.
another thing.
So now I think it is rested upon or on the shoulders of political leaders, be it in government, other government, the opposition, the ruling establishment, to be more robust by encouraging their citizens. After signing the agreement, come back to your citizens, your supporters, to tell them the importance of this peace agreement.
Sure.
If you don't, sometimes the people listen to the political leaders.
Of course.
Sometimes you see the political leaders, the opposition, the people in ruling establishment will use the ordinary people to instigate violence. At the end of the day, when it is melted against another person, then you see you and I who are in a particular tussle will go and hawk and
Not
settle our
classes.
dispute. So I think it needs to have a trickle-down effect on the ordinary people that support these politicians in Liberia.
Sure.
Like that, we're going to move forward.
And about the former vice president saying that they need extension in the process, I think is somehow necessary because he gave reasons. He said the process had been slow. It had been slow, and some workers, they go to work very late and leaves early. And if they would not extend it, then they would stop, meaning that they would stop some Liberians from getting their voter registration card. And that's a truth. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so we'll go to the telephone line now. The lines are activated. Farmington Peace, part signed, but can it stop electoral violence? And let's get to the phone line now. What do you make of this entire agreement that was signed on yesterday by political parties in Liberia? 0770 907 907 0880 907 907. And you will be live on today's paper with just 17 minutes. That's 30 minutes to go. We'll take the first person.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Your name and where are you calling from?
This is Afonso Doro. I call from the old road.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Farmington Declaration or peace accord, let me put it that way, is very unique, and it's not strange to Liberia. We've been going through such process. But I want to say this. The folk estate, we have to do with the press or the media. You people are the problem when it comes to electoral violence. I'm saying this to mean that the folk estate are easily bought, most of them are easily bought by politicians to carry on electoral violence talks. The talk shows, somehow send a signal of electoral violence. Because when votes are being counted, for instance, you're playing music, to create problems, the pressure, all of those things.
Okay.
And those things, those are things that bring about electoral violence at a higher level.
Okay.
So if the folk estate is included, and you people are really bent on bringing peace, you people should be balanced and should be very respectful and responsible in dealing with the electoral process. Otherwise, that thing that goes down over there will just be a fiasco.
All right, thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the political parties to have a greater responsibility to play. We'll take more calls right here. 0770 907 907 0880 907 907. Have this person online too. Good morning, let's hear you. What's your name? If that person is out, have a caller there?
No, not yet.
0770 907 907.
We have one here.
Okay.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, my sister.
Your name and where are you joining us from?
I'm telling family calling around.
All right, Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, I call you from different purposes. I using your platform to free express my view to like 24 free existing problem.
No, then
No, it's
Let's
another
talk to this
time.
person. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, let's hear you. What's your name? Where do you call from?
I'm Patricia Cooper calling from Kingsville, precisely or Soakley Belt.
Go ahead.
I actually want to make my contribution this morning about this peace process. Our political leaders are the problem in this country. They will go and start with agreement, but who know the enforcement of the law, well, it will be serious. So, sign a peace agreement is a fine thing. For the trucking of the electorate to the village or district, causing a problem. So I heard you saying that the vice president make an emphasis on the trucking of electorate in the village or how they call it, district is a fine one. But if the same people will stand by that law and enforce it, obviously there will be no noise during the electoral process.
Okay.
So we are asking them at least what they sound, they should be able to live by it and to enforce the law that we, the citizen people, will govern their instruction. I thank you this morning.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks so kindly for your contribution. We'll take 2 calls to call it a day on this edition of today's paper. Okay, so 0770-907-907, Indeed, are the numbers, and you will be live on today's papers right here on Voice of Liberia 104.1 FM. We have a call on the line from your end. Yes. Okay. Take that person.
Okay, the person left the line. Let's take that. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, you're
morning.
live. Let's hear you. What's your name? If that person is out, I don't know what's happening to the line. So we can take 2 calls to call it a day on this edition of the show. We've got to wrap up. 0770-907-907, are the numbers, and you will be live on today's papers right here on Voice of Liberia 104.1 FM. But I think with that, we just have to wrap up on this edition of the show. Yes, we got to wrap up on this edition of the show. So that does it for the color segment. But before we go, let's look at the revision of papers featuring stories making news in the print media on this Wednesday. And our first stop here this morning was the New Dine newspaper, through the Independent. On the far right, you have
The Daily Observer newspaper.
we have the Heritage newspaper,
And the Independent newspaper.
the Front Page Africa newspaper, and New Liberia as well are all developments we followed on this Wednesday's edition of the show. But let's acknowledge those of you watching: Samuel Gay, Chiko Golafale. Thanks for joining us. Fournier,
And
Bro, J, Bama, Williams Senior. Fournier,
that's-
I'm screening my eyes.
That's
yet again.
Takwa B. Sewa.
Okay, you got a good eyes. Is it TS's son? Yes.
Matrisa's son.
Okay, so my eyes cannot permit me
It's
to
Samuel
see.
Gay.
Yeah, Samuel Gay and the rest of the guys. Thanks for following, and thanks for listening to us well on this edition. But it has really been a wonderful time. Samuel, we gotta go.
We gotta go. So till we see Friday again, till we talk to you guys Friday, we have been here, and we look forward to non-violence in our electoral process comes October 10th.
Okay. Many thanks to our producer, man Eric Nangbe, and man DJ Secret, who they've been here left and right making sure that get on your screen this morning. And many thanks to Mr. Darlington Pogba, who was very key, was instrumental in helping to as well that you get a direct view about the papers right here on Voice of Liberia. So then, we've been your presenters, Abraham Parker and
Samiria Online.
do have yourselves a pleasant May we. Bye-bye.